Hey gang, Ronin here. Welcome on back to the Retrocade. It's Saturday and it's 4th of July weekend. Hope you're having a safe and happy start to your Independence Day, wherever you may be, and welcome to another edition of Sports Saturday, where we go back in time and play a classic sports game from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation. And this week, I was thinking about it with the Wimbledon tennis tournament going on over in jolly old England. I figured what better time to go back to 1988 in the Nintendo Entertainment System and revisit one of the games that I never in a million years thought I was ever going to like, let alone play. But we're going to play Jaleco's Racket Attack. And what we're going to do is we're going to play a grass court version and see if we can get through a set, if not a full game in a half an hour. Now that allows me to get through that really annoying music that I can't turn off. But if you've been enjoying the content on this channel, as always, best way you can show it is to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, ring the bell to be notified of the latest content. Also, don't forget about Suckerpunch Sunday coming up tomorrow, where we'll play a classic fighting or fighting platform-based game from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation. We did have one that we had on tap for last week, but we had massive technical issues on the recording side of it. For whatever reason, the audio did not come through for either my through my microphone or from the game itself. So we're just going to go back and redo that game tomorrow. So, but we will have a Suckerpunch Sunday. Don't worry, it will be there. So, also, you can follow us on Twitter at @Retrocade. Help spread the word about this channel so we can hit our goal of 100 YouTube subscribers as soon as we can. That way we can unlock the customization algorithm and we can make it bigger and better. And if there's a game you'd like to see us feature from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation, leave it in the comments below or drop me a tweet. And your options are, as always, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Super Nintendo, the Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, or MegaDrive, SNK, Neo-Geo, Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1, or PlayStation 2, and it can be any game you want. Now, if you've been following along with this series, we highlighted the original Jaleco sports game Bases Loaded back, I believe, in episodes 4 or 5. I'll have to double check my notes on it. But really what Jaleco was able to do with the technology of the 8-bit generation and create interesting games that you would not normally otherwise think to play shines through in a game like this. Now, obviously, playing a game that's built around tennis is not that hard. And the reason why I like this game more than pretty much any other tennis game, which is saying a lot because this is pretty much the only tennis game I've ever played for more than 5 minutes without getting really frustrated by it, is the way that the physics is done, the way it's presented, and the difficulty spike is not incredibly ridiculous right out the gate. So how it works is you hit the B button to set the serve up, then you hit it again, you hit the A button to follow through on the serve, and then it's a tennis game. You just got to follow the ball and hit it and make sure it stays in play. Now, the one thing about this game is that your position of where you are, where you hit the ball, is critical, because you can have situations that is not going to be right on the line. Now, unlike modern games, you don't get the benefit of replay. If the umpire calls it out, it's out. And I whiffed on the serve. Other than that, the standard rules of tennis apply. You get faults if you whiff on the serve for one thing. Oh, and he put it right on the line.
15 all.
Now, when you're returning a shot, you have two options. You can use the A button and do a standard return, or you get the B button and you lob it. Now, this game came out, I was about 11 years old or so. And as I mentioned before, I have an older sibling, and for whatever reason, he really got into tennis right around the early to mid 80s. And again, through my exposure to most sports games, it was because he got into it that I got into tennis, and I ended up watching, especially during the summer when Wimbledon would come around, we would watch that because in 1984-85, there was a tennis player by the name of Boris Becker, and he was 17, 18 years old. And he went on a tear and won Wimbledon during that span. If I remember right, Becker won it 3 times. And he was such a dynamic player in that you would see him flying around the court, and he would be hitting shots that at the time most people didn't think you'd be able to hit. And that was one of the things I really liked about him. Plus, growing up as a kid, I always knew tennis to be a very stodgy, conservative, gentlemanly sport, in the same way that golf was. And by the 80s, you saw a turn of new talent coming into the sport that would later be personified by guys like Andre Agassi, especially. Where they brought a lot more style to what seemed to be a very stale old game. And also, technology had changed much. When I first started really getting into tennis, they weren't playing with wooden rackets anymore. They were playing with steel rackets. Granted, now the technology is the same way as in golf, as in most sports, where the technology's really taken over the sport, to good or bad. That's not my call on it. But this was one of the few sports games that I could play on my own that I wouldn't get so overly frustrated with it, because it provides a challenge, but isn't out to kill you. And playing it on different surfaces, you get different results. Like playing on grass, the ball will move a different way depending on how you hit it, as opposed to if you're hitting on a hard court or as if you're hitting on a clay court. And then Jaleco was able to take this and take those sorts of differences and plug it into a game that, again, this is a almost 35-year-old video game. And say what you will about Nintendo games, but for as advanced as they seemed at the time, obviously by modern standards, I mean, it's like what I was akin to seeing Atari 2600 games when the Nintendo came out. It was so much more advanced, but they were doing much more with less. Now, granted, when you're making a game like this, you don't have to utilize a whole lot of memory space and and processing power on a lot of graphics and a lot of stats or anything like that. It doesn't keep stats for you. Obviously, you see the players aren't overly designed. It's pretty rudimentary for 1988. And you think about the fact that the Super Nintendo would be coming out in a year or two, really? And you'd start seeing 16-bit graphics more. And there you go. There's where you see your position needs to be pretty critical, because I just hit the ball right off my own leg. And Racket Attack wasn't a popular game. I mean, again, like most sports games, you're playing to a very specific niche. And because this being, released in the time it was, you also didn't have, obviously, there were no endorsements or anything like that. Although, you see the Wilson label on here. That was about the only endorsement that Jaleco had. And back in the day, game designers could get away with this. Well, I shouldn't say get away with it, but that was about the limit of what you would see on most sports games. Is you would see, you get a Wilson, or you would get maybe a Spalding or something like that. But unless it was an athlete of some serious renown, like I said, we played Joe Montana football last week for Sports Saturday, and it's crazy to think that at one point Sega went to EA and said, what you need to do is stop making John Madden football, because we're going to do Joe Montana football, and we think Joe Montana is a better idea for a presentation and a title for our football franchise we want to create than John Madden. John Madden was a coach. Joe Montana was not just a quarterback. He was arguably, and still to this day, the greatest quarterback of all time.
30.
and that EA said, well, we'll help you make Joe Montana football, but we're not stopping Madden. And to think that if they had done that and Joe Montana football ended up taking off, that 30 years later, instead of playing Madden, we'd be playing Montana football. Or not. If it ended up being a complete dud, then who knows where that would have led EA or where that would have led Sega. But it's one of the great what-ifs when you think about it. But depending on how well you play this game and the quality of the opposition you have, and first round matches in this game are not usually that hard. Oh, I love charging the net, but you have to be very careful. And again, that's part of the issue playing on different surfaces, that the ball will go in different directions. Get it back to deuce.
Deuce. Fault.
Oops, send that one a little bit long.
Fault.
Oh!
Advantage. Receiver.
And I whiffed, and I gave it back advantage to Borowski. Trying to get aces in this game is nigh on impossible. And an ace, if you don't know, if you're not familiar with tennis terminology at all, is when you can score a point directly off the serve. If you can send a serve over and your opponent can't return it, that's an ace. In playing against the computer, it is pretty much impossible to get it. I mean, you can get one very rarely. By comparison to some other tennis games that I was playing prior to this,
Advantage. Server.
those games are a lot easier to get aces, or at least have aces scored against you. But I did try out a couple of different 16-bit games for the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo prior to popping this in and saying I was going to go with this week. And really, Racket Attack still is just a better game. It really is. Again, it's challenging without being ridiculous right out the gate. Now, there's a really good possibility that I will sweep this set. But that is only because I have played this game so many times, or at least this first match in the tournament so many times.
15.
That I have really no reason not to do well.
Love. 30.
So I'm already up love 30 here. And each player, as expected, and you have 6 to choose from, and you have both men's and women's players, so if you want to play ladies tennis, or if you are a female and you're looking to play a version of tennis, and you don't want to play a man's version of it, then you have that option. And each player, and again, this isn't an officially sanctioned game, so you don't get to play with actual players, but to me, in some ways, that's even more fun because you don't have... You get to kind of be a little bit more original about it and do your own thing. But each player has their own strengths and weaknesses. Like Brovsky, who's my opponent, is a very strong player. He's got a very tough serve, and he's very... tends to be very steady in volleys, whereas Eagle, who's the guy I'm playing, can play well near the net, like that, but his serving isn't really the best. So you get guys like that. where each player has not necessarily a flaw, but they try to make it as rounded as possible.
Love.
But I'm cruising here through this first set. Still would like to get an ace. There we go. Take that.
40.
I love being able to charge the net and just doing a drop shot like that. But you do have to be careful. If you charge the net, there's a couple of ways it can go. You can pull off a shot like that. You can put it right in the net, which, as you progress further in a tournament... Oh, I gave him an ace because I moved.
15. Love.
I moved first. And like I said, you can try and cut it, but you can put it right in the net. So I'm already down love 30. But the further along in the game you go when you try those shots... Oh, nice comeback. Little backhander right down the line. You didn't have a prayer on that. Those sort of shots get harder to pull off because the opponent will be on top of it. That's out.
30. All.
See if I can battle back here. Yep, break point.
30. 40.
Now I've got set point to boot. Except I hit it right off my feet, so we go to deuce. I do like this. Oh, man, I missed it again. I do like the fact you get this modified overhead look, too, where it's... The perspective is such where it's not truly overhead, but it's also not... It's more like a 45-degree perspective. Now we're back to square. All right, deuce again.
Deuce.
And when you're playing against somebody and you can start pulling off rallies and cranking out shots like that, it gets genuinely exciting. For what seems like a very monotonous and boring game otherwise. You actually feel like you accomplished something when you can drop a really nice shot in past your opponent. And there we go, we take the set. We're only at 18 minutes, so let's see if I can blast through another one here really quick.
Fault.
It's funny, besides watching it on TV as a kid, tennis wasn't a sport I ever thought I would find myself getting into. Growing up the way I did, I mean, I grew up in a family that had pretty much no money,
30. Love.
and we didn't have access to anything like a tennis court. I think one year after my mom got remarried for the third time,
40. Love.
we were at a cookout with my my second set of step parents, and they had a badminton net set up, and my brother and I went berserk on that thing. And I still remember I managed to hit an incredible shot where I basically pulled a Boris Becker, where I had to dive for the bird to hit it back, and I was maybe 2 inches off the grass. And not only did I get it, but I popped it up over the net. My brother went to spike it, and he whiffed like that. So you get that overhead smash, and then good luck trying to stop that. But yeah, I think I was maybe 10 years old, and that's still one of the few fond memories of my childhood, was actually being able to pull something like that off. Because being a skinny as a rail elfish kid,
15.
I wasn't the most physically gifted by a long way. And it wasn't until I got to middle school, and we had a neighbor of ours who played on the middle school tennis team. He was a nice kid, but he was so much better than us that basically he used this as cannon fodder while he practiced. But we would go up, because we lived right next door to my middle school. During the summer, we would go up to the tennis court, and he would just throttle us. And my problem is, because I played baseball so much, I never got good at creating topspin, which is how you do anything in tennis. Is you come over the top of the ball, and that's how you're able to keep it on the court instead of launching it up into the stands. Well, at that point, I loved being able to launch the ball into the stands. Used to piss them off so much, they would have to go retrieve the ball every time I hit it. But this was one of the last games that Jaleco ended up making for the NES before they jumped up to the Super NES and started concentrating on games like Super Bases Loaded. And really, that was the franchise that Jaleco leaned on even up into the PlayStation era. They didn't do much else. They did do a basketball game around the same time called Hoops, which, if I'm honest, is not that great a game.
Love. 15. All.
Swing and a miss. In some ways, I'm glad this game doesn't keep track of stats, because one of the things you have to pay attention to in tennis is what are called unforced errors. Oh, right on the line in the corner.
30. 15.
Now, there are times when, if you get a call like that, and I think it's if you mash the, I think it was if you hit the select button, or you had to do something. Or sometimes the computer would just go ahead and do it, where
15.
either you or your opponent would get angry and argue with the judge, and they would do a quick cutscene where you see the guy standing there next to the judge's chair, and all you hear him say is "no,"
Out.
which is
40. 30.
you have to bear in mind this was still towards the latter half of the career of a guy named John McEnroe, who really took arguing with the umpires to new heights. And it's not something you see too much nowadays in the sport of tennis, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Oh, and he got it by me.
Deuce. Out.
Oh, and I gave him the advantage.
Advantage. Receiver.
Alright, get it back to deuce. Enough of this horsing around.
Deuce. Advantage.
Okay, I'm up 3-love here in the second set. We got about 5 minutes to go. See if I can burn through these last 3 games.
Love. 15.
Totally whiffed on that. You can't really manipulate the spin on the ball that much aside from how you hit it. Like, you can't just drop it over the side of the net and have it die like you can nowadays. This game isn't that exact. So that's where it comes in handy, being able to charge the net and knowing when to be able to drop one in like that. Now, on the men's side, they do best 3 out of 5, and in women's, they still do best 2 out of 3, which is in keeping with how men's and women's tennis is played still today. Still haven't let the ball hit the ground yet. There we go. The ball never hit the ground in that, from 3/4 of that volley. I think we hit it back and forth with each other almost 10 times. Alright, lob it up there. Drop it down.
15. Love.
And the hitbox that you have in this game, as far as your racket goes, is pretty generous so long as, again, you're not standing right directly in the path of the ball. Then it will just bounce off of you.
Out.
And there are ways to manipulate the shot where your opponent really doesn't have any option but to hit it out. Still haven't let it hit the ground yet. There we go.
40. Love.
And you get just enough, like, slide as you're going around. That you don't necessarily have on hard court either. Because grass being a natural surface, you don't have as much tack on your feet. Oh, nice shot in the corner. Yeah, that warrants a cheer from the crowd. I'll give him that. Alright, we will get our second set. If we can preserve the shutout here. Oh, he did it again.
30, 15.
Well, he's not going quietly. Fine, I will just smash it home.
30, all.
When you get to the second round and going from there, though, wow, you put that right by me again.
30.
Those shots are not as easy to convert. There. Get it to deuce. Alright, let's put him away here. Give me the advantage. Now we got set point. He'll lob it. And he'll hit me right in the head with it. Well, dang. Okay, we go back to advantage me. Now let's ice him and get out of here. Oh, he lobbed it right over me again.
Deuce.
Put it right on the baseline this time.
Receiver.
Third set point of the game. There we go. It's done. So that gives us a 2-set-to-love lead, and if I carry on like this, it will be pretty easy for me to cruise in and take this one home. But we'll call it good there because we're at a half an hour. But that, guys and gals, is Racket Attack for the Nintendo Entertainment System from 1988. Again, 30-odd years later, 33 years later, it's still one of the best tennis games that I've ever played, and that's saying something because most tennis games are not that interesting. You go through the 16-bit generation and the 32-bit generation, and the games are just... You've really, really got to love tennis to be able to be any good at them at all, where this is a game you can plug in, pick up, play for a couple of minutes if you want, or even play for a couple of hours through a tournament, and it's still fun, it's still challenging. Again, the difficulty curve isn't so sharp from round to round if you play a tournament, that you can actually find yourself getting better at it, but also finding that your opponent is not going to make it as easy for you as it is out the gate. And again, you can play guys or girls, so if you want to play on the women's side of it, you can, or otherwise you can just play on the guys' side. But if you enjoyed this, and I hope you have, best way you can show it is hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell to be notified of the latest content. Also, don't forget about Suckerpunch Sunday coming up tomorrow, where we'll play a classic fighting or fighting platform-based game from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at our Retrocade. Help spread the word about us so we can hit our goal of 100 subscribers as soon as we can. That way we unlock YouTube's customization algorithm and make this channel bigger and better. And if there's a game you'd like to see us feature from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation, leave it in the comments below or drop me a tweet. Can be any game you want. As always, my name is Ronin. Great to be with you on this Saturday again. Have a great 4th of July, everybody. Be safe, be well, and we will talk to you tomorrow for Suckerpunch Sunday. Bye.